I did not plan the scream. It tore out of me the moment the door closed, when candlelight shuddered against damp stone and the lock slid home with a sound too final to ignore. My name is Elspeth of Werdenberg, and that night St. Anselm's Abbey stopped being holy. Air fled my lungs as fear surged faster than thought. I will not be silent, I heard myself cry, the words raw, louder than the vows spoken hours earlier. The sound struck the walls and came back broken, multiplied. Rushes scraped my bare feet as I staggered, breath burning, heart hammering like the bells above. Outside, chanting faltered. I knew it because the silence arrived suddenly, thick and startled. Somewhere a bell rope swayed unanswered. Wax dripped from the candles in slow tears, pooling at the edges of the room, catching the light like something alive. My hands shook as I pressed them against the door, feeling the grain of the wood, the tremor passing through it. Earlier that evening, I glimpsed the monastic ledger laid open near the sacristy, its pages dense with names and dates. Later it would record this night in cramped, hurried ink, noting the wedding halted after darkness fell. In that moment, I did not know that. I only knew that my life had narrowed to breath, to sound, to the choice between obedience and survival. Honor demanded stillness. Survival demanded noise. Footsteps scraped stone outside. Voices murmured, sharp with confusion. My scream had crossed thresholds I was taught never to approach. Fear coiled tight in my chest, yet beneath it burned something steadier, a refusal shaped by years of silence. I thought of my mother's warnings, my father's bargains, the lessons drilled into my spine. All of them urged endurance. None prepared me for this. Hands struck the door, not hard but firm, testing. I backed away, rushes biting my skin, candlelight throwing my shadow huge and distorted across the wall. The abbey seemed to lean inward, listening. I realized then that sound could not be reclaimed. Whatever followed would follow because I had spoken. My breath came fast, uneven. I waited, knowing the scream now belonged to everyone, and that dawn would decide whether it had saved me or condemned me. Dawn finds me already awake, breath frosting the air as I stand in the courtyard, staring at chapel doors that refuse to open. Pale light creeps over the stone, turning it the color of old bone. Frost cracks under my boots when I shift my weight, sharp as the thoughts pressing behind my eyes. I am Lord Conrad of Werdenberg, and this marriage was meant to end questions, not create them. Servants move too quietly along the edges of the square, eyes lowered, hands careful. They feel the rupture before it is named. Word travels without permission. A scream in the night does not stay contained. It seeps into stone, into breath, into reputation. I clench my jaw beneath my beard, anger warming my face despite the cold. This union was meant to bind land, bloodlines, futures. It was meant to be clean. I remember Elspeth as a child running barefoot after geese, hair loose, laughter unrestrained. That memory unsettles me more than her defiance. Children grow into obligations. They learn silence. They learn what is owed. Somewhere along the way, she learned something else. The thought burns. Earlier, before the bells should have rung, I reviewed the marriage contract once more, vellum stiff beneath my fingers. Obedience listed beside dowry, written with the same care as fields and rents. Ink pressed deep with certainty, as if words alone could guarantee compliance. I had trusted that page more than flesh and breath. Now it feels thin. Whispers reach me in fragments carried by the cold. Each syllable scrapes my pride raw. Shame rises hotter than anger because it is witnessed. Rivals will savor this. Allies will hesitate. Authority depends on the appearance of control, and mine feels suddenly fragile. I am offered choices, though none are spoken aloud. Crush defiance, make an example, restore order through force and fear. Or pause, allow questions, risk mockery, risk something worse. Bells finally ring, late and uncertain, their sound wrong against the morning. I realize then that whatever decision I make will stain me. Control, once lost, does not return cleanly. I straighten my cloak and prepare to act, knowing the abbey watches, and that restraint may cost me more than cruelty ever could. The corridor feels narrower than it should as I stand there, candle sputtering in my grip, wax dripping hot against my skin. Each echo sharpens my unease, footsteps from elsewhere sounding closer than they are. I am Margareta of Ulm, and I have walked brides through fear for decades, but this night has teeth. The scream still rings in my ears, vibrating through bone, refusing to fade. It was not the sound of pain alone. It carried decision. That is what frightens me. I shift my satchel higher on my shoulder, feeling the familiar weight of tools inside. Li. Nen, herbs. Implements that can heal or condemn depending on what I say they reveal. Power hides in small objects. Once long ago, I received a letter from my mentor, folded and sealed with care, later stored in a convent chest among things deemed too dangerous to lose. She warned me that women who speak truth often pay for it twice, once with their reputation and again with their safety. I hear her voice now as clearly as if she stands beside me, candlelight catching the lines of her face. My hands tremble despite my effort to still them. Duty pulls me in one direction. Conscience drags me another. If I speak honestly, Elspeth might be freed from a lie built to cage her, or she might be destroyed for daring to resist. If I lie, the world will keep turning, marriages will proceed, and this scream will become a rumor, then a footnote, then nothing. Silence is safer. Silence is how I have survived. Boots scrape stone outside the corridor. Authority approaches, measured, impatient. I can smell the smoke from torches, hear murmured orders. They expect me to confirm what they already believe. The door at the end of the hall creaks, shifting on its hinges, a sound that tightens my chest. I have seconds left. I look down at my hands, at the stains that never fully wash away, proof of years spent between life and judgment. I breathe once, slow and deliberate. Whatever I choose will follow me long after this night ends. The candle flickers, shadows stretching across the wall like an accusation. I step forward, knowing that truth spoken aloud can change history, but also knowing how often it breaks the woman who dares to speak it first. I was halfway through the psalm when the sound reached me, not a voice exactly, but the absence of one. Chant faltered beneath the vault, and candle flames bent as if listening. Stone carries sound differently here. It stretches it, reshapes it, delivers it where it does not belong. I am Brother Matthias, trained to trust order, yet my hands tightened on the book as murmurs slid through the choir like cold air. Elspeth's name reached me in fragments, sharpened by fear. I did not look toward the nave, though every instinct urged me to. The words on the page blurred. Silence pressed against my ears harder than noise. I had been taught that prayer absorbs disturbance, that holiness smooths disorder. That night, holiness cracked. Later, a chronicler's note would describe an interruption during nuptial rites, phrased carefully, obediently, as if restraint could erase the rupture. In that moment, restraint felt like a lie. My pulse thudded loud enough to feel sinful. I remembered my vows, the long hours of discipline, the promise that obedience itself was virtue. Yet God's law and man's law do not always breathe in the same rhythm, and I felt the gap open beneath my feet. Elders gathered near the pillars, robes brushing stone like wings folding inward. Their voices stayed low, deliberate. Authority does not shout when it is afraid. I watched their faces tighten, eyes flick toward the marriage chamber, then away. No one asked me to move. No one asked me to speak. Silence was assumed. Chanting resumed, slower now, each syllable weighed as if we might bury the sound beneath devotion. My mouth formed the words, but my mind was elsewhere. I wondered who prayer served when it was used to cover fear. The scream was gone, yet its echo clung to the arches, sharper than incense. I felt complicit simply by standing there, by letting sound replace truth. As the psalm ended, my voice did not rise with the others. I closed the book instead, quietly, decisively. I understood then that some sins echo louder when nothing is said afterward. I remained still, listening to the space between notes, knowing the abbey would remember this silence even if the record would not. I entered the chamber beneath flaring torches, smoke stinging my eyes, the air thick with heat and unease. Authority usually steadies me. Tonight it felt brittle. I am Count Ulrich, appointed to resolve disputes, to restore order where it fractures. Straw shifted underfoot as I stepped inside, every sound amplified by stone that had heard too much already. Elspeth stood near the bed, spine straight, candlelight cutting sharp planes across her face. Fear was there, undeniable, but it had hardened into something else. Resolve unsettled me more than tears would have. She did not bow. She did not avert her gaze. That alone threatened precedent. The scream still seemed to vibrate in the walls, an aftershock refusing to settle. An abbey inquiry record would later note testimony taken before dawn, language clipped and bloodless, as if neutrality could be achieved by removing breath from words. In the moment, nothing felt neutral. Law pressed on one side, faith on the other, and between them stood a woman refusing to be folded into silence. I felt the strain immediately. To acknowledge resistance was to admit vulnerability in a system built on certainty. To deny it risked unrest I could not predict or contain. I asked questions carefully, choosing words meant to narrow truth rather than open it. Each answer Elspeth gave landed steady, unembellished. Her voice did not rise again, yet the earlier cry hovered behind every syllable. I realized then that judgment had already begun before I arrived. My presence only shaped how it would be remembered. The candle flickered. Wax dripped onto stone like punctuation. I weighed outcomes as I had been trained to do, calculating risk, imagining consequences rippling outward through families, lands, contracts. Still, calculation faltered. Elspeth met my gaze without lowering her own, daring me to reduce her to procedure. In that moment, authority felt less like power and more like exposure. Whatever verdict I formed would echo beyond these walls, not because of what it said, but because of what it refused to hear. I drew breath to speak, aware that history often turns on quiet decisions made in rooms like this, and that once spoken, judgment cannot be retrieved. I hear the bells before I see the gate, and I know they are wrong. Their rhythm stumbles through the air like a man with a broken leg, striking ears that expect order. I am Agnes, a market woman with a basket hooked over my arm, cabbage leaves brushing my wrist as I stop mid-step. The square smells of damp stone and bread crusts. Voices buzz like wasps, circling without landing, carrying pieces of a story faster than proof can follow. I glance toward the abbey. Guards stand rigid at the gate, hands tight on spear shafts, eyes fixed ahead. The doors stay shut. That silence presses heavier than sound. A town ledger will later record a halted wedding feast, provisions returned unused, but no ink can hold the feeling that passes through the crowd now. It moves like a breath drawn and not released. I feel it in my chest first, a strange warmth that startles me. Hope is a dangerous thing here, I have learned that. I sell turnips and onions, I listen, I endure. Yet if a bride could cry out and be heard, even briefly, then perhaps other silences are not eternal. The thought frightens me more than it comforts. A child tugs at her mother's sleeve. A man laughs too loudly, then stops. The bells try again, steadier, but the damage is done. We know something has shifted, even if we cannot name it. I tighten my grip on the basket handle until the reeds bite my palm. No one tells us to leave. No one invites us closer. We wait, restless, measuring time by rumor and echo. The abbey holds its answers behind stone, and the square becomes a witness against its will. I wonder what example is being set, and for whom. As the bells finally fall silent, the wrongness lingers, hanging over us like a question that refuses to close. I shift my weight and listen to my own breathing, counting heartbeats as if they might explain what the bells could not. Cold seeps through my shoes, and the smell of iron drifts from the gate. Somewhere inside, men argue softly. Somewhere inside, a woman waits. The crowd does not disperse. We learn patience by force here and memory by repetition. I sense that when the doors open, whatever emerges will belong to all of us, whether we want it or not. The air tightens, and I know this day will be remembered, though no one yet knows how by anyone present. I copy the clause by lamplight, wax popping softly beside me, and I feel the weight of unnamed lives settle on my hand. I am Heinrich Falk, jurist sworn to clarity, yet this page resists me. The room smells of parchment and smoke. Wind rattles the shutters, a reminder of how fragile order remains. The amendment concerns consent within marriage. The language is careful, narrower than justice, wider than before. A legal codex fragment attributes the change to an unnamed dispute in the Werdenberg lands. No woman appears in the margin. No voice is credited. Only the rule survives. As my quill moves, I imagine the woman behind the clause, a single cry raised once and nearly erased. Law often grows from suffering it refuses to name. I have seen this pattern repeat, quiet as dust. I tell myself neutrality is my duty, yet the pretense rings hollow tonight. I pause, listening to the wax harden to the wind press and withdraw. The clause will pass. Judges will cite it. Lives will bend around it without knowing why. I consider adding a note, a mark that might guide memory, but restraint has shaped my career. I choose precision instead. Still, unease follows my hand as I finish the line. Power hides in small revisions, in what is omitted as much as what is written. I close the codex and sit back, aware that history will praise the change without asking its cost. Somewhere, truth waits beyond the page, patient and unresolved. I think of scribes before me, of hands that trembled and steadied, of nights like this repeated across generations. The law pretends to be impersonal, yet it is built from moments of fear and cur. Age, outside, a dog barks and then quiets. I extinguish the lamp slowly, understanding that what I preserved will travel farther than any name I could have written. It will shape judgments I never witness and lives I never meet. That knowledge settles heavy, like wax cooling on skin, and it does not release me. I sit in the dark a while longer, listening to the wind, accepting that some origins remain deliberately obscured. The page is closed, but the story continues elsewhere, unanswered, waiting for another hand. It does not end tonight, despite my careful work. The silence remains intact, for now only. Here. I stand where the chamber once stood, grass bending under my boots, wind threading through arches that no longer remember their own shape. The abbey is broken open to the sky now, its roof surrendered to weather and time, yet the air here feels held as if sound never fully escaped. I am Clara Weiss, historian by trade, witness by choice, and I have come because silence never ends a story. I place my palm against the stone. It is rough, pitted, cool despite the sun. Lichen softens the edges, but the wall resists comfort. Wind moves through the ruins in low breaths, brushing my coat, stirring dust that smells faintly of earth and old lime. I close my eyes and listen, not for voices, but for the absence they left behind. This place learned something once, and it has not forgotten. Years ago, an excavation clue caught my attention in a dry report, a line almost overlooked. Disrupted flooring near the former marriage chamber, hastily repaired. No speculation offered. No emotion allowed. Stone lifted, reset, made obedient again. That detail drew me here more surely than any name ever could. Floors do not break themselves without reason. I kneel and run my fingers along the ground, feeling the unevenness beneath the grass. Somewhere beneath this soil, hands once worked quickly, erasing damage before dawn. I imagine the sound of tools scraping, breath held, fear driving efficiency. Repair is never neutral. It is an answer to something that frightened those in power. I try to imagine the scream itself not as an echo but as a force. Night shattered, candles shaking, men pausing mid-prayer. Fear transformed into defiance by the simple act of refusing silence. History prefers outcomes, contracts altered, laws amended, order restored. It rarely preserves courage in its raw state. Standing here, I feel that absence keenly, like a missing tooth the tongue keeps returning to. Sunlight slides lower, catching the edges of broken arches, casting long shadows that stretch and overlap. They do not hide the scars, they trace them. I think of Elspeth, though her name appears nowhere in the stone, nowhere in the codices I have studied. I think of the market woman who paused at the gate, the midwife who weighed truth in her hands, the monk who closed his book, the jurist who copied language shaped by fear. Their lives intersected here, briefly, violently, then dispersed. Recovery always feels inadequate beside loss. I can document, I can lecture, I can write articles that will be cited and then forgotten. None of that restores what was taken, yet responsibility presses heavy all the same. To stand here and feel nothing would be the greater failure. Stone does not demand justice. People do. A bird startles from a ledge, wings beating hard, the sound sharp against the quiet. I flinch, and then I smile at myself, unsettled by how quickly the body remembers what the mind only studies. Fear travels well across centuries. So does resolve. As evening settles, the air cools and the ruins shift in color, gray deepening toward blue. I step back, letting my hand fall from the wall. The abbey holds its silence carefully now, but it is not empty. It asks questions without words. How many voices were smoothed over? How many repairs were made before truth could take root? How many screams outlived the stone that tried to contain them? I gather my notes slowly, knowing they will never be enough. Memory is not preservation. It is obligation. As I leave the site, wind follows me through the broken arch, brushing my back like a reminder. The scream that once shattered this place does not belong to the past alone. It waits, unsettled, for anyone willing to listen again.